So good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome Omar Prestwich, social media community manager for K-Swiss. Welcome, Omar.
Hello, welcome, or thank you.
um, so Omar, let's start at the beginning. For those who don't know much about the history of K-Swiss, which was founded by two Swiss brothers in LA, can you
Yep.
please share a little more about the story and how the K-Swiss brand came about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the two Swiss brothers, they are Art and Ernie Brunner,
Yes.
and they founded K-Swiss in 1966. And they designed, or they moved here. They wanted to design a shoe and be in the shoe industry. They come from a ski and tennis background, so they actually took inspiration from a ski boot because of how technical it was. And so they designed the K-Swiss Classic after it, and it debuted at the Wimbledon tennis tournament.
Wimbledon, yes.
Yes, in 1966. And so that's the history, and that was like the most iconic shoe because it was the very first all-leather tennis sneaker ever. And also it was the first American heritage sneaker brand. So, I mean, it was basically founded and started here in the United States.
Amazing, amazing. So, what would you say that K-Swiss as a brand represents, and what do you think separates the brand from other sneaker brands in a highly competitive market?
Another great question. So K-Swiss represents, at least to me, the hungry entrepreneur. It represents people that are continually striving to be their best self and work on themselves, and you are constantly motivated and self-driven. So the whole mantra, if you look at what K-Swiss is doing right now, is specifically geared and focused towards those people. We started as a tennis brand, tennis performance, and as any athlete knows, it takes consistency, drive, and focus to be the best.
Yes.
And nowadays, that same mentality is applied to the entrepreneur to be the best at your perspective, on your playing field.
No, that makes sense. So, how has the K-Swiss brand evolved over the years, and how do you believe having social media tools enabled you to be different in terms of marketing and branding?
It's evolved in a very interesting way. As an American heritage tennis brand, that that kind of that stuck with K-Swiss. And if you look at some of the history, K-Swiss has had some interesting growth, and then they disappeared for a little while. And what I mean by that is, from the 60s to like the 70s and 80s, they were a classic white sneaker that everyone kind of started recognizing. In fact, I want to say in somewhere along the 90s, I'm not sure the exact date, it was such a staple West Coast sneaker that a lot of hip hop artists like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and Ice-T were wearing these shoes. And some schools in California actually banned the shoes from the school because they thought that it was somewhat, borderline gang related, which is
Okay.
really interesting sneaker. Because the West Coast and East Coast. And then fast forward, the brand moved into more of the preppy court, Tommy Hilfiger, that kind of style.
Yes.
And in the 2000s, it seemed like everybody was wearing K-Swiss. You had like Anna Kournikova representing. You have the Bryan brothers that are still to this day wearing K-Swiss sneakers. In fact, they won the doubles tournament. I can't remember which specific one, but it was a big tournament that they won the championship wearing K-Swiss, and they still are a part of our team. So K-Swiss became this super popular brand, and the biggest commercial was like, "I wear my K-Swiss," and I think most people have seen or remember that commercial if you are somewhat older.
Yes, for sure.
And then, after all of that, they started getting into a little bit of running. And so K-Swiss started sponsoring Ironman. And then they had these shoes called the Tubes that were specifically for running. And I might have to double check all my information, but if I remember correctly, that was a big deal. And I actually wore those shoes a few years ago. And what blew my mind is they were overly comfortable,
Wow.
meaning that I wasn't so used to having shoes that felt like I was on clouds. Does that make sense? Like you
Yeah,
step and
no,
you're like, wow.
absolutely. And that's hard to come by because they don't design shoes like that most of them. So
Yeah. And somewhere along those lines, something didn't align with the consumers per se, and K-Swiss somewhat fell off the map. And there was this huge campaign a few years ago. This is before I ever worked with K-Swiss,
yeah.
but they had like Jillian Michaels, they had Kenny Powers, I think is his name. He was like the face of the campaign. They were trying to revive the brand, and they were really pushing for the Tubes, which are these running shoes. And it was an amazing campaign, and there was a lot of money that went into that. And for some reason, shortly after that, the brand just kind of disappeared. Not necessarily that it died, but the visibility just wasn't there. And so it was an interesting time for K-Swiss in the mid 2000s.
Okay, amazing. So I see that you collaborate with amazing entrepreneurs like Gary Vaynerchuk. Can you share a little more about this and the marketing strategy behind this? I believe it is a great move for the brand. And how do you feel collaborating far more with entrepreneurial talent like Gary versus what is more traditional route of working with celebrities? And has this been a better, more long-term strategy for the brand?
That's a great question. It's my favorite one to answer, specifically because what K-Swiss is doing and the voice of entrepreneurship is the best thing to ever happen to K-Swiss, in my opinion, outside of the company being started and having it be an iconic tennis brand. And what I mean by that is a few years back, I'm going to say maybe 6 years now, the president of the company, his name is Barney Waters. He back then, I don't believe he was not the president back then, but he was really high up in the company.
Yes.
He saw an opportunity and an open lane where Barney's background is really interesting. He's always got his nose in the right place, meaning he knows what is going to happen or what the youth culture movement will be. And he saw that kids nowadays want to be the boss. They want to be the CEO. And more, it's always in the 90s or before, you looked at celebrities, you looked at athletes, and you're like, I want to be like them. Hence, remember the commercial, Be Like Mike, I want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
And so it's all about, hey, I want to be this athlete or this movie star. And then things shifted with Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and the ability to become your own person started being a big movement. So he caught on early that is what we should be doing. If we're going to reemerge and become who we were and bigger, you have to do something a little bit different. You can't compete with athletic brands that are dominating the market, and we're not going to be a celebrity brand because that's not our lane.
No.
And it's for some reason, Barney just caught onto that right away. And so he found Gary V and realized this is when Gary had 200,000 followers, somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
And so he saw him popping up everywhere, and he thought, this guy is perfect for what I want to do with the brand. And so he reached out to Gary, cold call, basically just through the DMs, and said, hey, what do you think about making the first signature entrepreneur shoe? And that started up the whole conversation. and it opened up the lane that we are in now. And so that's how it all started. And that's, I think, again, the best thing that K-Swiss has done, because now Gary is in my opinion probably one of the greatest entrepreneurs to date. And it comes from the positive message that he shares and how real he is with everyone.
Yeah.
And he is his own person. He's not trying to be anyone else other than Gary Vee. And he's not fancy, meaning he's not flashing watches and cars and all this stuff. He's grinding all the time. He's got his team.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing. That's the message that we're focused on right now.
Yes. No, that makes sense. So that leads me to the next question. So can you share with us about your role as the K-Swiss social media community manager, and what has been your journey to get there?
Yeah, definitely. So my role as the K-Swiss social community manager is essentially I'm the voice of K-Swiss. And what I mean by that is I run the K-Swiss Instagram, the Twitter, the LinkedIn, excuse me with that email, the YouTube. And so I'm copywriting all the time, and I'm responding to people, and I'm engaging in conversation in DMs and Twitter, everywhere that I can. And that's a big responsibility and a big role. And I feel super blessed and thankful for this opportunity. And I really believe that, the role was almost meant for me. I've been following Gary Vee for like 6 years. And he was a big influence in my life as far as pursuing what I wanted to do and chase my own personal greatness. It just so happened to be aligned with K-Swiss's entrepreneur movement. And before the whole Gary Vee collaboration started, I had bought into K-Swiss's vision before. And so I always wore K-Swiss to remind myself that I can make my own future. And I would just, it sounds a little silly, but it's the truth. If I had big plans in a certain day, or I needed to get a lot of things done, I would specifically wear K-Swiss to remind myself, like, hey, this is why you're doing something today. And then the Gary Vee collaboration happened, and I was just thrilled. And then fast forward through continual progress, and by that is I was pursuing what I wanted to do, which was branding and social media, and I was building my own little brands here and there, and that opened up an opportunity to work with K-Swiss. And so Barney and I had become somewhat Instagram and email friends, and fast forward, he offered me an opportunity to work for K-Swiss. And so my journey to get here was aligned with what K-Swiss inspires people to do, which is believe in themselves. And when the opportunity happened, you can't say no to that. And
no, for sure.
So I feel super thankful, and I feel like this job and role was meant for me, because if you're going to talk about if you're going to talk about entrepreneurship, you have to be relentlessly positive, because it's not
easy. It's a lonely journey.
Yes, it's a very lonely journey.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that, because I've moved around from city to city to pursue what I've wanted to do. I've left, jobs. I've gone through crazy relationships because of my focus and drive. And I'm so thankful, for these opportunities, because now if I'm going to be the voice of a brand that talks about that, you have to relate with people.
And no, absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. So how does K-Swiss go about choosing who, as a brand, you collaborate with, and who have been some of your best campaigns and individuals you and as a brand have worked with?
That's an excellent question. So for the most part, when we choose collaborative projects, it always comes from the top. Barney found Gary Vee, which was the best one. And then our previous marketing director, Patrick Buchanan, he was able to align us with some other entrepreneurs that fit the brand. Because when you think of, and when I say fit the brand, when you think of business people, you think of people in suits. And that whole thing, let me close my email all the way. I don't know why.
No worries.
So entrepreneurs or business people nowadays, it's interesting because you don't have to dress up in a suit. You can wear sneakers.
Yeah.
And so
and it's about keeping it real, right? I mean,
I mean, it's a beautiful thing to know that business culture has shifted into what you just said, keeping it real and being yourself.
Yeah.
And so we find people that are that fit that mold. So Anwar Carrots is a great example. We've done 3 shoe collaborations with him. He's got these long orange dreads. He's super stylish, and he's got his own streetwear brand. So he's someone that we work with because he fits that mold. Then we have Karen Civil, who owns Civil Enterprises, and she is a social media guru, has done a bunch of things, for example, for Lil Wayne and other top level hip hop celebrities. And she, that's not, and she's not like wearing a suit all the time. Or Blippy, who is a YouTube star that a lot of kids know. He is someone that was in real estate and decided that he was able to teach his nephew, just basic little kid things by, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but kind of like a Blue's Clues. He realized that his nephew was learning a certain way, and he was helping him learn. So he decided that he could do that as a living, and now he has, I think, over 5 billion views on YouTube.
Amazing. That's amazing.
So we look for people that are just hustling and doing what they need to be their own version of success. And that is kind of how we look for and collaborate with people.
Amazing. So you in your role, what have been some of the biggest lessons and learnings? And as social media is forever changing and adapting, has this been a challenge for you, and how have you adapted?
That's an excellent question. I thought before I came here that I understood social media. I'd been able to grow a few different brands from 0 to like 10,000, 0 to 30,000. And I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I come to K-Swiss and I definitely feel like a newbie. And so it changes rapidly. You're totally right. But what I've really learned the most is the power of engaging with people.
Yes, for sure.
And I mean, you and I have been on and off in email for 9 months.
Yes.
and so since I am, K-Swiss is a big brand, and to put things in perspective to the listeners, we are such a small team. For how big the name and brand is, it's a very small team. And in the 8 months, or not 8 months, excuse me, in the 11 months that I've been here, because I've only been here 11 months, I've been able to help the brand grow, like on Instagram, 30,000 followers.
Wow, amazing.
Which is, it's kind of wild because it's all organic. We're not paying for anything. And that comes through engaging with people. So what I've learned and struggle with the most is following up with every single person, because once you start engaging with people in DMs, whether that's on Instagram or Twitter, it's never ending. It's almost like people want that instant response. Yes. And that goes from the DMs, it goes into email, or people will go on images and try to communicate with you that way, which is great. And so the challenge is always keeping up. It's just never ending. No. And I feel through my previous work and through just how much I love the brand and how much I love people, I never stop.
No.
If it's 10 p.m. and I've got 10, 15 minutes, instead of checking my Instagram, I'll be on K-Swiss's and I'll see what's going on and I'll respond to people. And that is my favorite thing, because if you're on it like that, you actually can see what people really say about your brand. And
Yeah.
then you get to see the good and the bad. And I love that.
Amazing. So that leads me to the next question. The influencer market is also changing, and it seems a lot timed on the influencer market. However, do you think that the bubble is going to burst on the influencer market?
Another great question. That you know what? I think the best way to put it is one of my favorite sayings that I heard Gary say years ago, which is something that I live by. He said in a talk or in a book, I can't remember at the top of my head, but he said, cream always rises. When you have your coffee and you put cream in it, the cream will always rise.
Yes.
And what I take by that is real influencers will always rise because they have real influence.
Yes.
And I think that comes through a sort of discipline or genuineness or real hard work. And that will never go away. As long as someone is authentic and they have something to really give and give value,
Yes.
there will always be influencers that will rise. So I don't think that the influencer market is going to go away. I think that the real ones are going to rise and shine, and then the other ones that thought they were but turns out that they're not, I think that they're going to fizzle away.
Yes.
which is a great opportunity for them, in my opinion, to take a step back and evaluate and become the influencer that they thought they were or they can be. And so I think it's influencer marketing to me is a beautiful thing because it allows people to be their best self and give a lot of brands value. So as long as that's the focus of people versus, give me something for free, I think that it'll continue to grow.
Thanks so much. So that leads me to the next question. So many brands have decided to not sponsor celebrities as they do not engage with their audiences. My question is, what has been some of the best branding campaigns from a social media standpoint at K-Swiss, and that you have seen and has been the most effective?
Yeah, that is the truest thing ever. So the beautiful thing about K-Swiss and my role, which again, I'm forever thankful that I have this opportunity, is that I love engaging with people. And it comes from K-Swiss, and no other brand will do that. You will not see Nike going into the comments or Adidas going into the comments or their celebrities getting into the comments. You won't see that. And I take ultra pride in that because when those little, and this is a two-part answer. So those little things that you do to a customer or someone that could potentially be a customer, they remember that and they feel special because I've been in their shoes. And that is what sets K-Swiss apart from any brand, which makes the campaigns even more powerful, and it makes the campaigns more real because we're not getting top celebrities. We're working with everyday people. I call them everyday heroes. That's something that I love using that phrase, everyday heroes. And it makes our campaigns more for the everyday person, the everyday consumer. And campaigns like Gary Vee, for example, they're my favorite. They're the most challenging because Gary's brand is all on social media. He engages with everybody, and his team engage. It's just a powerhouse. So when we have a launch like Gary Vee, how we just did the optimism and positivity shoes.
Yes, I love them, by the way. I don't have any yet, but I love them.
Well, we'll have to figure something out for you. I'll have to talk to my Europe team to see and get you a pair.
Thank you.
But that's the opportunity for the brand to really take a huge stride, because when you have thousands of people talking about positivity and optimism and sharing it, you need to be involved with every single one of those people.
Yes.
And that's like one of the hardest challenges for me to do, to keep up with everybody. It's also the most rewarding, and that's what the campaigns are about right now. And those are the ones that are most successful, because you have K-Swiss involved and you have Gary Vee involved, and that's the kind of collaboration that is the most successful. And I think more brands, if they do campaigns like we're doing, they're going to find success that they never thought possible.
Absolutely. Because that's one of the things that I find very disappointing about big name celebrities is they have, either somebody else managing their social media accounts, there's no engagement. And I think that there's a lot of brands who have paid, six figures to these celebrities to basically help them promote and, obviously increase the sale of their brand. But there's zero engagement. And there's a couple of other brands that, I've spoken to, non-related to the sneaker world, but, they've all just said, what is the point? They would rather have people, like you said, like Gary, or, people of influence that is actually going to really give back to their audience, because without the audience, they wouldn't have a brand. And, it just works both ways. So I think it's an amazing what K-Swiss is doing as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right on the money. When it comes to brand collaborations or brands in general, I really believe that both parties have to be aligned. And
Absolutely.
and with entrepreneurship, it's all about positivity and self drive, and you need to have those kinds of people representing the brand, and you can't put a face really on that, because it's multiple faces. It's entrepreneurship is in the heart.
Absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. What are some of your career highlights, having worked or working with the K-Swiss brand?
Yeah, so the biggest highlight, and I love sharing it, and any listener, feel free to reach out to me, and I will elaborate on this more. But my career highlight, truthfully, is I created my own lane here. And what I mean by that is I'm a college dropout. I have no, according to the rate of success, to get to where I am right now is nearly impossible, but it is possible. And my highlight, or my career highlight, is making it here and becoming the social media and community manager for a global brand like K-Swiss. And so the highlight is every day. Every day I get to come here, I feel completely blessed and thankful. And that's, if I can share it every single day, that's the biggest highlight. And now in 11 months, I've, been able to participate in 4 shoe releases with Gary Vaynerchuk. So that was the Clouds and Dirt, Dark Clouds. We did the Shoe Palace release, and then we just did the Positivity and Optimism. That's been amazing. On top of that, working with Dan Aykroyd a little bit on the Ghostbusters release. That was amazing.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
That was huge. Working with the Paramount Pictures team to do a Clueless shoe release. That's been amazing. Doing these podcasts, like you had taken the time to share my story, is another highlight and a blessing. And it makes me more motivated every single day. Interviewing, for example, Jordan Harbinger, who is one of the top podcasters in the world.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, and to be sitting across from him and asking him questions and joking, those are things that I feel forever thankful and motivate me. And you can call them highlights, but I feel that everybody can create these type of opportunities if they, it starts with your surroundings. It starts from just being thankful for where you're at and the people that you're with. And if you're not happy, then that's a choice, and you can choose to be happy and level up your life, and that will lead you to where you want to be. So my highlight is essentially just being here every single day and making that message louder.
Amazing. So that leads me to the next question. So does K-Swiss have any other exciting projects in the pipeline that you are allowed to talk about?
Yes. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but we're always working on stuff. And I think that this year you will see some pretty amazing things. We're still heavily involved with esports. So you will see some amazing collaborations in the esports industry that are going to come from us. There are some more movie and TV show collaborations that are coming up. And I'm trying to think what I can share.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get you into trouble.
No, yeah. But just things, I mean, for example, we just did a Clueless shoe and we did Ghostbusters. So those are two really big collaborations. And that might kind of give you an idea of maybe some of the other movies that we're going to work with, or books that have been released that are very popular. That this year, by the end of the year, you will see some amazing stuff. Little Jupiter, which is a big sneakerhead influencer, we've collaborated with him. Again, Barney found him. And that's going to be a huge shoe release, because Little Jupiter, for the listeners that don't know him, he is essentially a trendsetter. And he's got his eyes on what is really fresh and what's hot. And he has top shoe designers and top celebrities following him. And so that's a really good look for K-Swiss. So we're doing another shoe release with him. The first time that we did a shoe release with him, his sneakers sold out in like 3 seconds. We all gathered around the table. We're ready to go live. We hit live. And as soon as we refreshed the page, the shoes were sold out.
Jeez, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
so, yeah, we were all like, is this right?
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say the three key pieces of advice you could give to those using social media, and what do you feel that is the most effective tips that you can give when doing social media campaigns?
Excellent question. So the three big pieces of advice, number one is care about the people, even if it's just one person. So here's a little technique that I use is I will, when I post a photo and likes start coming in, I actually, I'll start scrolling through the likes, and then if I see on the icon of the person, the little circle that lets me know that they have an Instagram story, I'll actually click on their stories and I'll look at them. And that's really powerful, because you get to see almost like they're behind the scene of their life. And that actually goes a long way, because you're taking the time to look at them, and vice versa. They're going to come back and look at you. So caring about the people that are looking and engaging with your brand is a big, big thing. And I really believe that if you just devote at least 1 hour a day to that, that makes a big difference.
Amazing.
Another piece of advice is take the time to look or take the time to match your copy with your brand message. And it's interesting to say that, because I look at how people scroll on their Instagram accounts and they're just cruising. And sometimes I ask myself, is it worth the time to write the copy? Because what are the real chances that someone is going to look at it? And I say yes, because if it's done right and you really take the time to make good copy, it means you care about the brand. And that goes a long way. So you not only should you care about the people, but you should care about what you want to tell those people. So that's a powerful tool, is to learn how to copyright. And that in and of itself will open up other mental things for you, because you learn how to briefly share about a product or a brand. So engage with people, number one. Number two is care about the brand on how you do it. And I mean, the third thing is not necessarily related to social media, but a tip or advice is just always, always, always be positive and do what's best for you.
Yeah.
And if you're living that kind of lifestyle, that kind of trickles down to everything that you do with business and relationships.
Perfect. That's amazing. So this is the last question. If there are entrepreneurs or other people or individuals of influence who would like to get in contact with you, who are open to, sorry, let me rephrase. So if there are entrepreneurs or other people of influence who would like to get in contact with you, are you open to collaborations, and what is it that you look for specifically when working with people?
Yes. And yes, meaning you can follow me on Instagram at Omar Prestwich and send me a direct message. That's the best. And after that, I'll, depending on the dialogue and if it's going to work, then I'll always, offer my email, or you can email me at omar@k-swiss.com. And with collaborations, that's an interesting word, because there's two types of collaborations. A collaboration would be like a Gary Vaynerchuk collaboration, where we're doing a whole shoe and a campaign, and that's a real collaboration. Then there's a collaboration with Instagram people. I call those collabs.
Yeah.
Where we're not making a shoe with them, but we are giving them either free product before it launches to help promote a product, or we have a budget where we're able to pay some creators to do things. And so I personally, what I look for is genuineness in people.
Yeah.
If I'll browse through, I guess another tip, which would go back to the other one, is I'll browse through certain models that we've used in the past, and I'll kind of try to dissect everything. I'll be like, which photos do I like? Why do I like them? Who shot this photo? And then I'll start trying to find their network of people, because if we're going to collaborate with someone, I'd love for their whole entire team to be a part of it, because that makes everyone around the project involved and care more about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I look for. I look for people that are genuinely trying to be their best self and push that kind of voice, whether that's through video, whether that's through copy, art, or modeling. And then that's the kind of people that I look for in a collaboration that's not necessarily a shoe release or something like that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for all your insight and just sharing about such an incredible brand. And hopefully we can have you back in the future.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much for taking your time to interview me. That means the world to me.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Bye.